episode 44 of Grace and Steel. I'm Kevin Steele.
And I'm Kevin Michael Grace.
We lead off this show with a subject I'm calling the Brexit Exit Poll Predicts. In previous episodes of Grace and Steel, we've talked a lot about the change in voter attitudes in the Western world recently, moving away from the old adversarial left versus right and towards something different. More often than not, we've called it nationalists versus globalists. We've used the rise of nationalist parties in Europe and the success of the Donald Trump primary campaign in America to support this idea. Now, in this show, we're going to examine the results of Lord Ashcroft's June 23rd exit poll following the British referendum to leave the European Union. We're going to see whether that gives us more evidence of the change. Can it provide us with some more details? Kevin, what do these numbers suggest to you?
Well, they suggest to me that the traditional left-right definition is dead and that we are in the midst of a great realignment politically.
Internationally?
Yes, I think everywhere in the West. I want to start by talking about Lord Ashcroft's exit poll numbers on religion and race. So let's go top to bottom, from people who supported Brexit the most to people who supported them the least. Christians at 58% leave. Jews at 54%. White at 53%. Sikh at 52%. No religion at 45%. Mixed race at 33%. Asian at 33%. Muslim at 30%. Chinese at 30%. Hindu at 30%. Black at 27%. Now, I was fascinated by the fact that the Jews voted 54% for leave, which is 2% more than the overall total.
Why?
This is a very hopeful development.
Right, okay.
Very hopeful development.
Surprising, I take it. You thought it was surprising.
Well, I think that given what's happened in Britain in recent years with these crazy Muslim preachers and that constable being hacked to death in the middle of the street.
The Rigby case, yeah.
Yeah, Lee Rigby, I believe his name was. Yeah. That the Jews are looking at this question. Well, I should say that Brexit, the left said that, or the Remain side said that the right is turning this, the Leave campaign is turning this into a referendum on immigration, and we can't let that happen. Well, it appears to a large extent it did happen. If the Jews are getting woke, as they say on the alt-right, very significant.
Right.
The Sikhs at 52%. Big difference between them and all of the other racial minorities. Now, Sikhism, as you know, was started as a paramilitary movement. And it was started specifically because of the belief of people in the Punjab that the Hindu leaders were not doing enough to stop the Muslim conquest of India. That's why they have the kirpan, you know, the sword,
right,
and all the rest of it, because the Sikhs are soldiers. And the Sikhs have always been drawn towards the strong horse, as Osama bin Laden put it. Now, if you look at the Asians, 33%, Muslims 30%, Chinese 30%, Hindus 30%, Black 27%, you see an estrangement, a very strong estrangement from majority opinion. That if blacks are coming in at slightly less than half of that of the total, this indicates that they do not think the same as a majority of people in Britain, and the same being true for Hindus, Chinese, Muslims, and Asians.
Okay, and you see that, you can translate that into society, or transfer it into a society like ours, Canada, and into the...
Well, sure. This is the intersectionality question again. It's the war of all against all. Now, our friend Ryan Landry wrote on his blog, 28 Sherman, I wrote years ago that a law of immigration is that the immigrants will vote for the patron that protects them and keeps them in the nation. That is on full display with this vote in the UK. The powers that loved the EU and more centralization were the powers that pushed for Remain. Immigrants read that message loud and clear, except the Sikhs. Brexit's exit polls also showed that Labour had plenty of areas that supported Leave, which also shows the changing face of Labour. White Labour was fine with Leave. Labour elite and elite patrons high were for Remain, as were their dusky imported voters low. There is a slim possibility this means that Labour fully jettisons the white Labour elements and pushes ahead for the darker future. For an American analog, think of the Nixon 72 to Bush 88 era. Voting is just theater, but the near future for England should make for entertaining moments. He continues, the left has nothing. As shouting racist means you have pushed voting purely to tribe against tribe for numbers rather than persuasion. Lee Kuan Yew, who I guess was the fellow who created Singapore and led it for many years. Lee Kuan Yew was right that multicultural democracies become voting fights among race and religious lines. The West only had to see their demographics change dramatically for the point to be hammered home. There must be some creeping fear in the back of white liberal minds across the West that their only allies are recent import and sub-85 IQ bread munchers, and those pets are not playing all that nice anymore.
Yet, Hillary and President Obama seem to be doing quite well with that constituency, don't they?
Well, Obama is black, and so the black people are going to support him tribally, as we saw rather extraordinarily in the 2008 and 2012 elections. The indications that I've seen is that, well, the black women seem to be on board for Hillary, or Hiltron, as one of her black supporters famously called her. But the black males are not all that jazzed with her.
Right, yeah. Okay, so I'm just wondering how far we can extrapolate this new alignment into.
Well, we haven't talked. I wanted to go into more specific numbers.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Now, the question was asked: do you think of each of the following as being a force for good, a force for ill, or a mixed blessing? And the categories were multiculturalism, social liberalism, feminism, the green movement, globalization, the internet, capitalism, and immigration. So, amongst the people who voted for Leave, 81% of them thought that multiculturalism was a force for ill. 80% thought that social liberalism was a force for ill. 74% thought that feminism was a force for ill. 78% of the green movement, bad. Social liberalism, 74%. And globalization, 69% force for ill. The internet, 71% force for ill. Capitalism, 80% force for ill. Now, people pointed out that people were going around saying that 22% of voters supported feminism, for instance. That's not true. We're talking about the people who voted for Leave. Mm-hmm. But the significance of this, as I see it, is that this coalition, because that's what the Leave campaign was, the Remain campaign was a coalition as well. These were coalitions which cut against party lines and against the left-right divide as well. 52%, a majority, that delivered the Brexit victory. If you look at these markers, people who see various movements as a force for ill, isn't this what you would call the traditional conservatism? Even social conservatism?
Maybe. It's the capitalism one actually is pretty close. I think you'd said that you'd misread that.
Well, capitalism, it's difficult to read this. Immigration was 80-20 against capitalism was 49%. It's rather, and you see the same numbers on the Remain side. Now, this tells me that capitalism, as currently constituted, is not that popular. Well, now keep in mind, from the 1970s, what we have heard is that capitalism is the victor. There is no alternative to capitalism. And then the Berlin Wall fell, and it's like, ha, end of history. Get used to it. It's the current year, and we're all going to be living on cheap chalupas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? But it would appear
there's winners and losers, and the people that have been on the losing side, it looks like it's about 50%. So...
Yeah, the globalists are in a panic.
Mm-hmm.
Because we control the megaphone, but these bastards, they're not going along with it.
Mm-hmm.
They're showing resistance.
Yeah, a big characterization of the Leave voters, the big movement over the past week, has been to characterize these people as extremely stupid, sort of mentally deficient. And I don't think that this really suggests that. I think that's kind of based on the education levels. I'm not sure what it is, but that's been their big drum, right? Why should the stupid be allowed to lead us?
Well, 52% is a majority.
Mm.
Now, famously, half of all people have IQs under 100. But if 52% of people vote for something, then you can't say it's the stupid vote.
Mm. Right, yeah.
By definition, you can't say that.
Right, yeah. But they seem to be hammering it home pretty steady anyway. It seems to be the one that everybody's liked. It's not very persuasive, but it's thrown a bone to the Remain people that they can.
Yeah, but we saw that when Bush won, when W won. Oh, it's all the stupid people. Well, let's assume for the moment that it's true. If a majority of the people, or at least the majority of the people who can be bothered to vote, are stupid,
mm-hmm.
then maybe we should pay attention to what they want.
Right.
Because democracy means the power of the people. Democracy does not mean the smart guys, the guys that went to Harvard and used to work for Goldman Sachs make all the decisions. That's not what democracy means. For decades, it's talk of America being a democracy. Well, America's a constitutional republic. And Canada, properly speaking, is not a democracy either. But the left has pushed this idea of democracy because of their belief that we have the numbers. Well, it would appear that they do not have the numbers.
But it's slim. I mean, it's not that big a difference to 50-50, right?
Yeah, I know it's slim, and Ryan Landry thinks there's going to be a civil war in the United Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's not going to be a Brexit.
Right. So they're going to have to send them arms.
This fellow associated with the UN in Britain, is Peter Sutherland. He's made it clear that, no, we can't let this happen. We have to have another vote, or we have to stop this somehow. My response to that, stockpiling arms, are you?
Oh, he's going to be one of these tough talkers again? Oh, yes, we can't let them separate. Send in the army.
There is no, the EU was controversial in Britain before Britain joined it. And there was a previous referendum where the Remain side won. We have had decades of so-called Euroscepticism that Britain got out of the exchange rate mechanism after George Soros stuck them for billions of pounds. Britain never joined the euro. People have been talking about the euro, the European Union, both for and against. It's a rare situation where there is a genuine popular engagement with a political subject. There can be no question that the British electorate knew what it was doing.
Yes, I agree totally. And looking at these attitudes that you've just recited, taking into account that some of these indicators, these markers are of social conservatives, we also have to take into account, I guess, the cosmopolitan versus the rural voter as well. I don't know whether that seemed to be something that was fairly significant. The fact that London voted for Remain, not as
well. That's where the government is.
Yeah. Well, no, but it wasn't as overwhelming as most people thought. There's still a lot of people in London that did actually vote for Leave, but I'm just trying to translate this over into the Trump vote as well and see how this
Well, let's look at I'll give you some numbers here. A majority of those working full-time or part-time voted to remain in the EU. Most of those not working voted to leave. More than half of those retired on a private pension voted to leave, as did 2/3 of those retired on a state pension. Among private renters and people with mortgages, a small majority, 54% voted to remain. Those who owned their houses outright voted to leave by 55 to 45%. Among 2/3 of council and housing association tenants voted to leave. A majority, 57% of those with a university degree voted to remain, as did 64% of those with a higher degree, and more than 4 and 5, 81% of those still in full-time education. Among those whose formal education ended at secondary school or earlier, a large majority voted to leave. So you see, we have an alliance of the people at the bottom, but I suppose you could say the people at the top, not the 1%, but people who own their houses outright. People retired on private pensions. 2/3 of those retired on a state pension. You see this, alliance again of people who have with people who don't.
Yeah, and how they view the future as well, I think, is borne out by that as well. Although, what was it just above that? They note that nearly 3/4 of Remainers think life in Britain is better today than it was 30 years ago. A majority of those who voted to leave say it's worse, 58%. So
that consideration is almost always based on personal experience. There are a few people with the honesty or the, philosophical reflectiveness to look at the bigger picture. That almost never happens. When people say that, my country's doing better, what they're saying is, I have a job which pays decently. I have a nice place to live, or even, I've got a girlfriend or a wife. I mean, I like my life. That's what they're saying.
Right, yeah. It just occurred to me, now I've skimmed this thing up and down several times, didn't read it thoroughly through. Is there an actual question on who has children and who doesn't in this thing? Because that's a marker that you've often cited in terms of fitness to lead. You say, well, does this person have any skin in the game? Do they have children?
Well, let's start at the top here. The older the voters, the more likely they were to have voted to leave the EU. 73% of 18 to 24-year-olds voted to remain.
Oh, there it is, right there, right at the top.
But of course, as we know, only 36% of that cohort actually bothered to vote, falling to 62% among the 25 to 34s. A majority of those aged over 45 voted to leave, rising to 60% of those aged 65 or older. Most people with children aged 10 or under voted to remain. Most of those with children aged 11 or older voted to leave.
But what about those without children? That's what I was wondering. I was looking for a comparison there, right? Whether they had taken that into account. Okay, people with children said this, and people without children said that. That's one thing I'm missing. I mean, I did notice that age thing.
Well, I have reached the last match on the page for children.
Right.
So.
And there's nothing in there that indicates that?
Not on this page.
Okay. I wonder if there's some kind of demographic breakdown for that. For the
no, but
Trump
you
voter.
can see that. You can see the age divide is very significant.
How so?
Well, no, because if you look at people over the age of 45,
I thought they have children. Sorry.
No, I mean people. Well, people over the age of 45 typically have children.
Right. Okay.
People over the age of 45, they have more to leave, or more to lose, rather. They have more to lose.
More to lose by remaining or leaving?
They have more to lose because they are set in their lives for the most part.
Oh, just more at stake.
They have made financial commitments. They have children who would be of university age or approaching university age.
Right.
Or going into the workforce. And, there's also a hormonal reason for this. There's a significant drop-off of male testosterone at the age of 45.
Right, okay.
Typically, around the age of 45, you find almost no violent criminals amongst people over the age of 45. And it's about this time that people, particularly men, begin to look backwards and not forwards in life.
Okay. So why that would cause them to vote leave, because it says a majority of those over 45 voted to leave. They would look back to a time when Britain wasn't so transfigured by immigration. Is that what you're suggesting here?
Well, if you're 45 years old, that means you were born in 1971. And there has been just a transformation of England since 1971.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Enoch Powell had made his famous Rivers of Blood speech, but to many people at the time, he seemed deranged because he was talking about something which most people didn't see. There's no escape now. Everything that he said that would come to pass has come to pass.
Mm-hmm. Except
this idea that we are strangers in our own country now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just with third world immigration in London. You see it out in the provinces. In Lincolnshire, this town, Boston, I think, it's majority Polish now. So it's not merely a question of racial differences. It's like people don't like going out into the high street and seeing all the signs in Polish.
Yeah, okay. Massive cultural. Well, it is the EU they're separating from. They're not separating from Africa or, the Far East. So
the EU has come to mean loss of control over destiny,
mm-hmm.
loss of sovereignty. People make the argument that immigration targets are set by the British government, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's true, but it's also, in a way, it's not true because of this idea that people have that we're being forced to do this whether we like it or not, and that the EU is behind this. And, of course, there are all of these, to give you an example, this right to, a stable life or whatever. Oh, no, we can't deport criminals, even violent criminals, because that would separate them, from their girlfriend, and famously, in a case that Theresa May cited, a cat.
Mm-hmm.
Theresa May got all this stick for saying this, but it is indisputably true that the tribunal or whatever determined that the fact that this fellow had a cat indicated that he had a stable life. It was one of the list of things making up his stable life in Britain, and therefore, under European law, he could not be deported.
That's the kind of thing that caused people to vote leave. That kind of story. Okay.
Well, no, that's absolutely infuriating.
Yeah.
I mean, either citizenship means something or it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're stuck with all the rotters in our country.
True.
People who were born in this country, they go around stealing, killing, raping, dealing drugs, or whatever. We're stuck with them,
Mm-hmm.
But citizenship means that if people come from elsewhere and they engage in these practices, we can get rid of them.
Fair enough, yeah. But if I look at this stuff on Lord Ashcroft's page and I say, okay, this is the new alignment, then we're looking at a very close fought race in the United States. I mean, there's going to be no landslide for Trump or Hillary.
I think there is.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's why I'm raising
record
this.
is saying it, and I'm sticking to it.
I know, but if you're saying that this is the new alignment and the new alignment is 52-48, how can it do the numbers change when they get to the United States? The alignment changes?
American society is different from British society.
Maybe we should go into that.
There's a greater streak of independence among Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Much greater streak of independence.
Okay, but the Brits were voting on a situation that was in front of them. They were members.
And also Britain has had to deal with the loss of empire and the loss of its primary status in the world. And this argument that we need to cling to the EU for dear life, because without it, I don't know, we're going to float away into the North Atlantic and freeze to death,
Mm-hmm.
and eat porridge with our fingers.
All right.
That this has persuaded a great many people, that this feeling of loss, that we used to be the top dog and now we're not top dog anymore. So we desperately need the EU. Well, Americans don't think like that. And Obama can go around telling Americans how they need the Trans-Pacific Partnership because it's the current year.
Mm-hmm.
That is simply not a very strong argument amongst normies in the United States of America.
Okay. So you're saying that if you and I take our last few pennies and invest in hats that say "Make England Great Again" or "Make Canada Great Again," we're not going to get rich because...
Well, no, I would say that the situation...
What do you think of that idea, by the way? I just thought of that.
Mega.
Mega.
Mega, huh?
Yeah, mega. That's great.
With Canada, you're losing a vowel there.
Yeah, well, so what?
Canada is something like about 78% white.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, now I've quantified it racially, but that's crucial.
Yeah.
In the United States, they're down to about something like 62% white.
Mm-hmm.
And thus you need a much greater polarization of the electorate. That kind of it's not necessary to have such a strong polarization in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, is slipping away from us. 300,000 people plus coming to this country every year, and I don't know, something about 90% of them are non-white.
Yeah, but half of them freeze to death. Just kidding. No, but it is a cold country. And we do know that Canada is a bit of a gateway to the United States as well. People come in here with the ultimate goal of heading down to the United States. So,
well, you remember when I interviewed Candace Malcolm?
Right, yep.
And she discovered that the Syrian refugees did not want to come to Canada.
Yeah.
That's a big blow to us because I have to tell our foreign listeners, I'm not making this up and I'm not exaggerating, that Canadians who really should know better talk about Canada's place in the world, and they give off the impression that, in Zimbabwe or Tanzania or in Bhutan, that they're seated there at the dinner table talking about Justin Trudeau and saying, Canada is back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well...
No, I mean, the rest of the world doesn't give a toss about Canada. We're not a very important country. And frankly, that doesn't bother me in the slightest. Because to me, the purpose of a country is to do right by its people, not to strut on the world stage.
Yeah, well, we got this kind of grandstanding PM at the moment,
Princess Rockstar.
Bit of a show off, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, anyways, I'm still stuck on this idea of making England great again hats, but they don't wear those hats over there, so.
Oh, the Chavs do.
Oh, do they?
The Chavs love the baseball hats.
Okay. Can we do a beret for the French? I'm just trying to think of ways to make money here so that we can something to market with the show.
The baseball hat has become very popular.
Okay.
As I say, it's associated with a certain type of person and not a person who is well regarded.
Right. Okay.
By the elite.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So that's what we're looking for, investors, to make England great again hats and make Canada great again hats.
I see that according to Lord Ashcroft's polling, the male and female numbers for vote and leave were exactly the same, which is significant because typically female voters resist change.
Right.
That if a politician or a political party or a movement becomes associated with change, particularly change that is characterized as radical change.
A step into the unknown.
Yeah, you will see female voters rejecting this handily because female voters like stability.
Okay, so this is significant. Why? How would you interpret this?
How I would interpret it?
Yeah,
I would interpret it that the revulsion against the list of categories, which we talked about at the beginning, is equally strong amongst both men and women.
Okay.
I mean, this divide on immigration is really shocking, with the Leave side being 80-20, viewing immigration as a force for ill, and the Remain side seeing it as 79-21 as a force for good. That's wow. That's up near Civil War territory.
Right. Yeah, that is the big one, isn't it? Yeah, that's huge. What other?
Well, no, another big
what comes
one is
close?
for as far as feminism goes, 74-26, bad versus good on the Leave side, and 60-40 on the Remain side. Multiculturalism, again, 80% of the Leave voters consider multiculturalism to be a force for ill. I mean, these numbers are hopeful to me, as I said, because they portend a great realignment. On the other hand, they're rather terrifying because there's no consensus in Britain.
Well, obviously.
There's a rather shocking lack of consensus, but who's responsible for this? We know who's responsible for it. The people who've been running the show since the Second World War.
But haven't they tried through their various propaganda organs to force a consensus on us? Or shout us down with insults?
Oh, yes, and they've arrested people for mean tweets and for having gollywog dolls in storefront windows. Did that strike you as an approach that's likely to make friends?
I guess that's probably why they felt so butthurt, because they've done all these things and yet people still resisted with a slight majority.
Well, that was the lesson that was learned in Canada after we had our Charlottetown Accord referendum in 1992. No more referendums. Because as I have pointed out, since that date, almost a quarter century ago, that the people can still say no. And so you don't want to give them a chance to say no, because they will say no.
But here, I mean, the Leave vote is a yes vote, isn't it, though?
No, the Leave vote was a yes vote, but it was a vote against the elite, against the establishment.
Right, okay.
There's no question about that.
Yes.
And I guess, this is what sunk Boris Johnson. That he decided in the last few days of the campaign to turn on Nigel Farage, not recognizing how enormously popular Farage had become, and not recognizing that his endless triangulation, he'd taken this too far.
Ended up shooting.
That, are you hot? Are you cold? And no, he's neither hot nor cold.
Which is tepid, as we know, yes.
Lukewarm.
Lukewarm, okay.
I spit you out of my mouth.
Now, this new alignment, could we take these numbers and perhaps paste them onto a country like France? Would we see similar types of attitudes amongst the Le Pen supporters, do you think? We know on the multiculturalism for sure, yes. Feminism, green movement.
I think the Le Pen supporters would be more against capitalism.
Okay.
Than the 51-49.
Yeah, the even split there, okay.
And I don't know, maybe, when you say the green movement, that's rather vague. When you talk about social liberalism and feminism, I tend to think, going back to what we talk about in the other part of this program, that there is a majority, I would say a large majority, that takes the view that feminism, okay, women work now and women have equality. And okay, so we have these previously marginalized groups who aren't marginalized anymore, and that's fine, but no more. No more. Stop trying to wreck society.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But I'm just thinking how far we can extrapolate this new alignment. We said on the Western world, for sure. We can't really say it would pose what this would look like in Canada at the moment, because right now we seem like a pretty paused nation. At least that's the way the powers that be are trying to portray us as.
There is a tremendous opportunity here on the right. We have this Conservative Party new leader to be chosen. May of next year. God, they put this off forever. But there is, there was all this butthurt amongst the commentariat here in Canada that Jason Kenney and Tony Clement and Andrew Scheer all publicly congratulated the Leave side for winning. And the reaction from the commentariat was, "How dare you? How dare you, sir?"
Yeah.
And suggestions that they'd lost their minds, politically speaking.
Yeah. No, they thought it was some kind of suicide, but I mean, they might be living in a bubble. At the moment, it's difficult to say. I can see this.
This is really simple to me. It's like that cloned politician on Futurama.
Right.
Speaking with this tremendous emphasis, "I'm against all those things that everybody hates." Yes, that's always a wise move politically.
Yeah, well, what kind of action does it translate into, I guess when we're looking at Brexit now and the aftermath, what kind of action is this vote going to translate into in terms of the political parties and the will to negotiate the Brexit itself? We're seeing.
Well, we have a revote coming up in Austria.
That was interesting.
Presidential election.
Yeah.
Apparently, someone noticed what I've been pointing out about postal voting for years. We bring the fraud to you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that that's a hopeful sign. And I don't think it really applies here, though, to the Brexit thing. I was thinking more about the search for a new conservative leader.
No, I was talking about in terms of falling dominoes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Austria is one. Brexit is one. We have Paul Ryan's primary coming up. And we have Trump becoming being elected president in November. Now, if Trump is elected president, which I believe he will be in a landslide, there's going to be a crisis of confidence amongst, all of these groups on the, the left side of Ashcroft's column, because they will be seen to be repudiated around the world. As far as Canada goes, I don't know, Princess Rockstar is popular now. I will warn, not that anyone in the Liberal Party is likely to listen to my warning, that particularly in an internet age, Justin Trudeau has become dangerously overexposed. We're about any day now. I just expect this feeling to sweep over people. Geez, Trudeau, are you sick of him already? Because I sure am.
Yes, that is true, especially after this weekend with the Pride Parade. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, there was the Three Amigos Summit in Ottawa with that omnishambles, as Malcolm Tucker would say, of the triple handshake.
Yeah, that was mightily embarrassing.
Look, we had the business of the Baltics, where it appeared that Trudeau did not know what the Baltic countries are.
Yeah.
And then there was that business about, was it quantum mechanics and data or something?
Yeah.
He was carrying on about. This is three things now.
Oh, okay.
Three things, the rule of threes. That the media is very attracted to the rule of threes. And if this meme gets out there, that Trudeau is, let's say, an amiable goofball in far over his head, well, he's in big trouble.
Yeah, true enough. But speaking of the Three Amigos, one of the things that cropped up over the last little while was this idea of Obama going on a speaking tour to the world. He practiced here in Ottawa with the Three Amigos. His pitch for globalization. Now, this is something that I didn't really expect to see when I was contemplating an Obama presidency years ago, that he would be going on a speaking tour for globalization, but that is apparently what he's going to do.
What, you're surprised that it's turned out that he's one of the pod people? I'm disappointed in you, Kevin.
I play a role on this show, and I have to stick to it. No, I guess I am surprised, that he would actually go out there. I mean, he's making all these qualifying statements. Yes, I can understand their blah, blah, blah. But now we've gone too far, I think is his latest statement. There's no turning back or something like this. What do you make of Obama's support for the pod people?
These politicians, I've been rewatching the thick of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you will recall in the first 2 seasons of it, the prime minister, obviously a Labour prime minister, became obsessed with this idea of his legacy, right?
Right.
All politicians do. And Obama is looking for his legacy, which turns out is globalization. So you see that hope and change has become more of the same, only more so.
But
hey, you all hate Goldman Sachs running the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I'm suggesting is we give them even more power.
Yeah. But he's going to be taking this roadshow, international, and then he's got to come back to campaign for Hillary, who has now repudiated the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement.
Yeah, sort of.
Well, kind of, yeah. We know it's all BS. We know she's, going to push that through because that's where her money's coming from.
No, it's really sad what we see with Obama. It's like, I'm still the president, I'm a powerful man. People like me. They really like me. So I'm going to go around the world and talk to people who are just like me. And I'm going to talk of globalism. And they're going to say, you are so right, President Obama. We need more of this globalism. And we can't turn back. It's too late to turn back.
Yeah, they were casting it as he has to summon up all his oratory power.
Oratorical powers? Which powers are we talking about here?
The ones that they were talking about at the beginning.
Are we talking about the oratorical powers of provocative tweets and okie dokie?
The one that sent shivers up that guy's leg, back in the day.
Oh, Chris Matthews.
Yeah, that power, which seems to have faded completely.
We had I guess America needed a black president. They've had a black president.
Yeah.
And there is a word for this. It's something called hedonic adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how it works. People think that they get something that they want, and it's going to make a tremendous difference in their lives. People find, you've been after a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you've been, I want to buy a house or a particular house, or I want to buy a great car or whatever, right?
Or I want to do a podcast.
Yeah. Or, I'm going to get a hot girlfriend or whatever. And there's typically buyer's remorse or a sense of loss there that they realize that I'm still the same person that I was. And this is what's happened in the United States with Obama as the first black president, particularly amongst black people.
Mm-hmm.
He is directly responsible for the rise of Black Lives Matter. This is no question in my mind that black people in the United States thought that with Obama as president, it was going to be the big rock candy mountain. That black people were going to be invited into the secret white people's bank,
mm-hmm.
Where they just, give you stuff because you're white, because of white privilege. And that hasn't happened. And we see this irritation, anger, rage with Black Lives Matter.
But it's not directed at Obama.
No, it's not directed at Obama. Maybe it will be. Maybe it will be.
Okay.
Because he was supposed to fix everything. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to make everything great. And everything was in place. The media was sold on this guy, and the Republicans, well, they haven't given him much trouble, have they?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But
Paul Ryan is still bending over backwards. Oh, what do you want on Puerto Rico? I'm just going to mention my suggestion that they sell Puerto Rico for $1 to Richard Branson, who can turn it into a theme park, Virgin Caribbean.
Wow. That sounds great. His pitch for globalization, his pitch is that it's too late, can't go back, no reversing time, it's the current year kind of thing.
You know what that sounds like? It sounds like communism. That's exactly the way the communists used to argue. That this is a scientific theory, one, and two, it is ineluctable. Mm-hmm. Okay? As I joked years ago, the communists used to say that communism was 20th century Americanism. And my joke was that Americanism is 21st century communism, or at least the Americanism of the type that Barack Obama and the elite are proposing.
Well, I see that joke just died when you qualified it, but go ahead.
Well, no, you see the joke is kind of dying anyway because, the support for Trump and some corrupt old shitbag like Hillary Clinton actually having to pretend to be interested in ordinary people.
It's making for some good moments. Yeah, so there's that.
Oh, you seen the latest?
The two-fisted drinking?
That she's drinking. She loves to drink, and she loves to. It's a social lubricant,
Yeah.
This is how she's going to bring the GOP on board when she becomes president, because she just loves to share a jar with people of all different types of backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, yeah, drunk Hillary. I wonder what that would be like. Because I'm thinking, that stage.
I almost want her to win.
The first stage, which is, yeah, wow. I've been pretty hard on the world lately, but the world looks pretty damn good, right? The second stage is the irritation, right?
Right.
And the third stage is, I'm sick of you people. With your endless demands, and you want me to be this way, and you want me to be that way, and it's never good enough for you.
That's right.
I think she'd get to phase 3 pretty quickly. What do you think?
Locked herself in the Oval Office where she's playing solitaire and drinking vodka.
Yeah, playing solitaire, and every so often you hear this hammering on the desk and strangulated screaming.
Oh, yeah, like the type of, like in Barton Fink, coming from the other room, yeah. The howls of pain. Well, anyways.
From John Goodman.
Yeah.
No, well, people have remarked this about Hillary Clinton, these ferocious rages that she indulges in.
Right. But, yeah, does she represent the Remain type voter? I guess that's...
Oh, of course she does. Of course she does. Now, I think the problem with her is that, there's a certain type of corrupt person who's supporting Hillary Clinton. And let's say there's several hundred thousands of these people in the United States who have a reasonable expectation that they will get a government job or some sort of NGO job if Hillary wins.
Okay.
Now, the problem is that you need tens of millions of votes to win an American election. And everyone else is thinking, yeah, well, what do I get if Hillary wins? First female president, like, who gives a shit, right? What does that do for me?
Okay. The black people obviously have answered that question. At least the ones that they're supporting her in such big numbers.
Yeah, but how many DeRay Mackesons are out there? You saw that he's getting a $135,000 a year job with the Baltimore school system.
No, I didn't see that. Oh, well, that's great. What the heck for?
Yeah, who knows? I saw the job title, and it's one of those typical job titles where you say this job could be everything or nothing.
Right. Yeah.
Probably the latter.
Right.
But, even amongst the so-called talented 10th, there aren't going to be many of them who are going to get $135,000 a year to do nothing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, yeah, that constituency is small. I appreciate that.
No, but when you look at what Trump is selling, is making America great again.
Mm-hmm.
And what Hillary is selling is Obama's third term.
Okay.
Oh, only it's going to be a female face.
Yeah.
White female face.
In a way, Leave was basically it was a Make England or Make Britain Great Again kind of campaign.
It was. Yeah. And Donald Trump appreciated that immediately.
Mm-hmm. And probably Remain did as well. It was interesting how quickly they conceded that fact. They
have an apprentice in Britain. It's hosted by this fellow named Alan Sugar, who's like a much nastier version of Donald Trump. I've seen clips from this shows, and this guy just seems like a total jerk. But Alan Sugar is a popular man in Britain. And there are a lot of people in Britain, and they look at someone like Donald Trump, and they think, why can't we have a leader like that? Because he actually makes things, unlike, David Cameron, who's a PR spiv, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or, a bunch of professional politicians.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most of these people, they've been around forever. They've just been weaseling their way forward, and you never heard of them until suddenly they were given powers over your life.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the idea of Donald Trump, attacking the Leave campaign because, it's like Donald Trump. Well, I don't think that they were considering the possibility that a fair number of British voters would say in response, well, what's wrong with Donald Trump?
Mm-hmm.
He wants to make America great again. Well, that's great for America. How about if we make Britain great again? Now, I say Britain great again because, I find myself talking about Britain, and as we saw with this Brexit referendum, we can't talk about Britain anymore because Scotland's gone off into its own place. They're now living in this fantasy where the European Union is going to give them all of the things that London would have given them.
Yeah, well, I think
so. The idea is that we are not going to run out of deep fried Mars bars.
Mm-hmm. You like that deep fried Mars bar thing, don't you?
No, I do, and I'll tell you briefly why. Because I'd heard about this for years, and I thought, wow, a lot of people really hate the Scots because that just sounds so fantastic and disgusting. No, wait a minute, it's real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. There was a columnist in Canada. We talked about this piece that he wrote on July 1st, Rick Salutin's piece in the Toronto Star. What are the prospects of a left-wing populism? That was the title of the piece. Did you get around to looking at that? He was bemoaning the fact that the populism is now on the right, and that the right has taken a lot of their issues and mixed them with xenophobia and race baiters and that kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, in his bemoaning this, I think what he doesn't acknowledge, of course, is that, the left or even the Remain side, they've so embraced this identity politics that they're kind of caught up in their own destruction in terms of this whole new alignment.
I'll just explain to our listeners that Rick Salutin is a longtime columnist, kind of an old-time lefty.
Yeah, exactly. He's the...
I've kind of admired him over the years because he is an independent thinker, and there are not very many independent thinkers on the left or the right in Canada. Mm-hmm. But look, this goes back to, you look at the New Democratic Party, which was founded, as you know,
in Canada, yes,
in Canada as the working man's party. And certainly by the 1980s, it had become the faculty club party. And then it just got overwhelmed by intersectionality. It's every mewling minority group in Canada that hasn't found a place in the Liberal Party.
Right.
And I suppose, one of the reasons why they had won second place, became the opposition under Jack Layton, who shortly thereafter kicked off. And they were beaten back rather savagely in the last election. I think the reason for that is all they have is identity politics. And Justin Trudeau said, hey, I have all your identity politics and more. Plus, I don't have a beard.
Yeah, good hair. I got good hair. Well, do you draw a parallel between the New Democratic Party in Canada and Labour in the UK? And can you say the Democrats as well? I mean, that's...
No, I would say that the Labour Party in Britain has the same problem as the New Democratic Party. Well, there's only one of them as opposed to two of them in Canada. But they don't stand for anything. I shouldn't think that there's very many working class people left in the New Democratic Party, and particularly with the savaging of the woodworking industry in Canada.
Okay.
We bow to American pressure.
Right.
And the union jobs that exist in Canada are overwhelmingly government jobs now.
Yes, that's it. The public sector unions. Yeah, they are the powerhouse in terms of the union movement.
And these unionists, well, their jobs have never been about making money.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as they see it, as you see with the Alberta NDP government, money is manna from heaven. That why are people always talking about money and we're going to get money? There's just a vast pool of it, and we put a bucket in and we drag out as much as we need, right?
Right, yeah. Well, the reason I'd raised Salutin and I was talking, about the left in Canada and England is I wanted to know whether that could be transferred over to the Democrats, because the Democrats, they can hold a lot of right-wing positions at the same time as holding left-wing positions, which really the NDP and the identity politics people have difficulty doing.
Well, a labor movement in Canada, like the labor movement in Britain and the labor movement in the United States, was strongly, overwhelmingly, xenophobically anti-immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
Because immigrants are brought in by capitalists to lower wages and to put natives out of jobs. And they still are brought here for that reason. Now, there's a woman called Judy Rebick. You ever heard of her?
Yes, of course, I remember Judy.
She's this American who's been a big deal lefty in this country for years. And I told her this 15 years ago. And she said, oh, well, this anti-immigration thing, this is a right-wing thing. And I said to her, in effect, are you kidding? Have you read the Globe and Mail or the National Post? The people on the right in this country are the strongest advocates of massive immigration.
Mm-hmm.
Because they want to lower wages and put natives out of jobs. And she said something, yeah, well, I'm going to have to think about it. I suspect that she didn't think about it. That the actions of left-wing parties, I mean, they serve only to depress or scare away their natural supporters. And all they've got left are the identity politics people who sit in cubicle farms in government offices.
Mm-hmm. So that, to me, I don't know whether I could say that is the nut of the new alignment, but it seems to be a key part of it.
Well, here's something. I've got Salutin's piece in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
He said there's been no substantial populism here yet. That's true. Well, there was the Reform Party, but I won't go into that.
Yeah.
Stephen Harper struck a few xenophobic notes, but no dominant anti-globalization chord. He remained a neocon at heart. Now, that's very astute
Mm-hmm.
of Salutin. Very astute of him.
You're signing all kinds of trade deals all over the place.
Oh, sure. And there's always like, isn't there like about 6 of them on the go at any one time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Free trade deals. Yeah. Most of them.
Well, I think that what Salutin's piece points out is that no one's really taking advantage of this in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
No one.
Right. Which is what you've pointed out, and your hope for the Conservatives to pick it up seems to be dwindling.
Look, if the NDP had not signed on to globalism and neoliberalism under Ed Broadbent, they'd be in power now. Because particularly after 2007, to hammer away at globalism and what they used to call the gnomes of Zurich,
mm-hmm.
the idea that these money men in foreign countries are deciding your destiny and they tell you it's none of your business. Well, that would have been enormously popular if they'd had their traditional anti-immigration policy. We're here for Canadians, we're not here for foreigners. They would have swept the board.
Mm-hmm. Well, this idea of Obama taking off around the globe and telling everybody that it's too late to go back on globalization.
Who's he talking to?
Well, he's talking to
the
converted. I was wondering, though.
Yes, exactly.
Is this going to help or hurt Hillary in the long run? Because it seems to me it would hurt her.
Okay, people have moved on from Obama. And I think this explains his peak.
Mm.
That he seems irritable all the time.
Okay.
Now, as far as Hillary Clinton has this problem, I was talking about this idea of millennials. And to a lot of them, they've never known a world without Hillary Clinton. I suspect to a lot of people, they have this idea in their heads that Hillary Clinton's already been president. Now, they know that's wrong, but she has been, she was at her husband's side, 2 for the price of 1 for 8 years. And then she got carpet bagged into the Senate in New York, and then she was made Secretary of State, and then she ran for president in 2008 and was supposed to win but didn't, and now she's running again. It just never ends with that woman. She's become like Bob Dole. Oh God, is that guy running again? We really have to make him president so he won't look so sad.
Yeah, but unfortunately there's a little more at stake this time around anyway.
That you said, I mean, Scott Adams is absolutely right that Donald Trump has made it appear as if he's president. I mean, when these terrorist attacks happens, we know we're going to get boilerplate from Obama and from Hillary Clinton. In terms of a robust response, we look to Donald Trump for that, do we not?
Right, yeah. Well, the people that look for outrageous speech, they look to Donald Trump as well. You should see Salon go nuts after he makes a pronouncement. But at any rate, okay, so this new alignment, that's what we'll call it. And
hey,
whether we can...
there's a line that I adapted from, what they call at VDare, the sailor strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And my line is this: you want to graze where the grass is.
Okay.
And my advice to people who want to be successful in politics in this new era is to pay close attention to Lord Ashcroft's exit polling.
Excellent. That's what we've been talking about this half. And we'll call an end to it at this point. That is the conclusion of the first half of episode 44 of Grace and Steel. We'll be back right after the break. Welcome to the second half of episode 44 of Grace and Steel. Our topic for this segment is called Everyone Loves a Parade. The Toronto Pride Parade has billed itself for years as one of the largest of its kind in the world. This year, it boasted that the heads of all three levels of government, for the first time, civic, provincial, and national, participated. And yes, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was there, mugging for the cameras, waving a rainbow flag, and on behalf of all of Canada, virtue signaling the complete triumph of the gay lobby over our society. He was the big news, until the parade tried to take a turn. And at the first turn, suddenly everything ground to a halt. Members of Black Lives Matter, who had been invited to participate, suddenly sat down on the asphalt and wouldn't budge until parade organizers signed a list of their demands on the spot. This instant intersectionality stole the Prime Minister's thunder and sowed confusion across the land. At least that's what I saw. So, Kevin, what's your take on the significance of what happened in Toronto this weekend?
Two things. I think first that we have reached peak gay, and second that we are beginning to see the unraveling of the city of Toronto after this intersectionality pile up at the Pride Parade on Sunday.
Well, one of the...
Now, of course, it's not just Toronto that's... been subject to this pileup. It's all over the world, isn't it?
The intersectionality you're talking about, the problems that...
The intersectionality,
yeah,
yes.
Of course, yeah.
Just to explain, what happened at the Pride Parade in Toronto, which is Canada's biggest and one of the biggest in the world, that Black Lives Matter Toronto, which is a group which has become prominent in that benighted city over the last year or so, shut down the parade for about 30 minutes when they sat down on the street at College and Yonge Street in downtown Toronto and said that the parade was not going to go ahead unless the organizers signed a series of demands, which included a bunch of mumbo-jumbo about black spaces and black infrastructure and black bodies. But most significant was that there was to be no visible police presence at the parade. And they caved. They caved immediately. And I don't know whether you saw the pictures. This document was actually signed with a quill. I am not making this up.
Ouch. I think there was some demands for money in there as well. That's actually what caught my eye, that they had,
Yeah.
it looked like it was all about the money.
Today, the story is, oh, well, we didn't actually agree to anything because, the person who signed that agreement doesn't really have the authority to speak for Toronto Pride.
It's not legal if you sign with a quill these days either, right? Yeah. Okay. That's right. The town crier had to actually walk through the streets proclaiming it for it to have legal force. Okay. Anyway, so I didn't realize that. I didn't catch up with the latest news on that. So they're now claiming no agreement. Okay. Well, I guess because there is money involved, that would make a big difference, because these are big money events,
Well, that is an interesting question about the money, and it seems to be a mysterious question. I was looking at the Wikipedia entry for Pride Week Toronto, and it seems to tell this sad story about, I suppose the high water mark was in 2009, when I will remind everyone that the great conservative leader, Stephen Harper, was in power, that Minister of State Diana Blonsey announced that Pride Toronto would receive a $400,000 federal grant under the Marquee Tourism program.
Mm-hmm.
And that did not sit well with a lot of conservative supporters. And they only got that funding for a year. And the Wikipedia entry does not go up to the present day, but it talks about indebtedness. A surplus of $219,000 in 2009 to a deficit of $155,000 in 2010. And total value of the grants Pride Week received declined from $972,000 in 2009 to $709,000 in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll just quote one last thing from this. Pride Toronto officials said that Pride Week 2009 drew an estimated 1 million people to Toronto.
We'll come back to that.
Yes, and contributed $136 million to the city's economy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've both been reporters, and we know how this works. And just in case anyone doesn't know, I'll explain it, which is that the reporter talks to various Chamber of Commerce types who insert their thumb into the mouth and suck on it for a few seconds and come up with a figure like $136 million.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because no one has any way of quantifying this.
Yeah, they don't. And a lot of it seems to be based on the crowd estimates, which, of course, throughout the 1990s and 2000s, the aughts, seem to be going up and up and up to the point where they reach this 1.2 million figure, right? And so you get that many visitors and you start, I guess this is how they come up with some kind of monetary estimate. They peer into their crystal balls and decide that, excuse the pun there, that each of these visitors will spend so much during their time at the Pride Parade. I guess that's come up with what's up with that at this point. But of course you go ahead and speculate, feel free.
Well, if everyone is taking part in something, then it's something that everyone approves of,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to go back to this idea of the numbers again. Some years ago, I very foolishly attended a fireworks demonstration in Vancouver, where I was living at the time.
Festival of Fire.
Yeah, it was a Benson and Hedges something or other before they stripped the sponsorship. Symphony of Fire.
Oh, Symphony of
that.
Fire, that's it. Yeah.
And it was out in the West End on the beach. And so we all watched the fireworks and went, ooh. And then when it was over, I thought, I'm an idiot. How am I going to get out of here? And everyone else was having the same feeling. The streets had been turned into a parking lot, for a mile in every direction.
Mm.
And there were all these people rather foolishly waiting for buses. And I thought, to hell with that. And I thought, well, I'll walk to Granville Street and get a bus from there. And it was an epic slog, let me tell you. It took me an hour to walk from Denman Street to Granville Street. And again, the idea that we're talking about 1 million people in Toronto. And how many people in Vancouver do they claim?
At one point, I think they were up to 650,000, up to somewhere close to 700,000. I think at one point that was the high claim. Of course, that was exploded in 2013 by one of the...
Yeah, well, someone from the gay paper, Extra West, said that it was more like 100,000.
Yeah, that was in 2015. But the guy who did the analysis in Huffington Post in 2013 said, yeah, it looked between 80 and 100,000 is what it was probably. And he was the one who actually called in a mathematician to estimate the crowd. And that guy said, they would have to be 47 deep on the sidewalk, all through the entire parade route of 2.7 kilometers, 47 deep, in order for them to achieve that number. And there's no way they were anywhere close to that. So it was a pretty good piece. We'll link to it, of course. And then the Extra guy did his piece 2 years later. He called them out on the whole million people idea.
Well, one of the things we were talking about is, why do people go to this in the first place? Because as far as I can see, it's a bunch of politicians and civil servants demanding that people applaud them.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was a big sign out at the Toronto parade saying, all three levels of government, or the premier, the mayor, and the prime minister were there. Why? Because it's 2016. There you go. So that's why. Because progress, baby.
Well,
you're dumbfounded. I like that.
Yeah, no, it just, I don't, I suppose I was excited by parades when I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time since I've been interested in parades.
Right.
And I suppose you can drag the kiddies down there. But there's all sorts of cavorting going on at these parades, which is children might find rather mystifying and even horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
There's a famous Onion article about this. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I think I have somewhere along
the
line.
gist is that this guy, big gay supporter, and then he went to the Pride Parade, and it was like, what was I thinking? These people are monsters.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I've never been to one, so I can't say for sure, but I certainly have seen in footage, and they love shoving it in our faces. In particular, our networks, like in Canada here, our national networks like CTV and Global News, they are just total shit lib. I mean, these people are just assholes. And
I'm not going to defend them.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just say, from the news point of view, particularly from a visual point of view, well, it's an event, right?
Yeah.
And you have these people waving rainbow flags and dressed in colorful garb. Plus, you have the Prime Minister of Canada, the Premier of Ontario, the Mayor of Toronto, the leader of the opposition party. So you have all of these famous and powerful people in this event as well. It's an easy story.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess. But, some of the images they show, you get the sense that they're taking particular delight in showing this stuff right around supper time, But anyways, yeah,
now,
used to it, baby.
I should point out that Stephen Harper, who was Prime Minister from 2006 to 2015, he never attended the Pride Parade. And
he was always washing his hair.
Well, he was busy.
Yeah.
He had another engagement.
Building a deck.
It was the same engagement every single year. I suspect that Harper has a little sympathy for this sort of carrying on, but didn't want to say so.
Mm-hmm.
This year, Patrick Brown, who was the new leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario, and I suppose is likely to be the next premier, he made a big point of saying that he was going to be there and the Tory party was going to be there in force, and it seemed like an ultimatum. You had better get your asses down here if you want a place in my Conservative Party, which is significant because Brown made his bones by sucking up like crazy to the social conservatives. And after they had done their bit to put him into power, he stabbed them all in the back.
You sure about that? You sure they didn't all come out as gay? I mean, they went to a gay church before the parade or something like this, so...
yeah, well, we saw the same thing in Alberta with Danielle, what's her name?
Smythe.
Smith. Danielle Smith.
I've forgotten her already.
That she groveled and groveled and groveled, and I believe there was a gay church visit there for her.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, it's not just, I'm not just going to the parade. I am steeped in gayness. Steeped in gayness.
Oh, these libertarians, I tell you, shake your head. Anyways.
But the reason I brought up Patrick Brown and Stephen Harper, of course, all of the declared candidates for the so-called Conservative Party of Canada federally were at the Pride Parade as well. Mm-hmm. And now that, everyone's on board, how can you épéter la bourgeoisie anymore, right?
Yes, and this was...
okay, so yeah. We have bullied everyone into going into the parade, and it strikes me this is rather similar to gay marriage, because there have never been very many homosexuals who ever wanted to get married. It was just a provocation.
Right. Well, we saw that out of San Francisco this year, the talk that was coming in, the stories that were coming out where people were saying, well, I'm not going down to that parade because it's not about the gays anymore. It's
not about the gays anymore. It's all about big business.
Yeah.
It's all about the beer companies.
Yes. Miller Lite. But
Miller Lite.
Yeah. So, there is a boredom factor there. And I think that's probably that was expressed out of San Francisco, which I think might justify your sort of peak yay assertion. Like I said, we can't tell about the Toronto parade because we have no idea how many people attended that, because nobody would give any crowd estimates this time round. And the shots, most of the photographs were pretty tight. You can see there's not that many shots. And in fact, I noticed in some of their coverage, they were using photographs from the previous years as sort of their crowd, their suggestions of large crowds. They were obviously from previous years. So,
didn't you start by looking at the numbers for the Edmonton parade? Oh
yeah, it sent an email to you a couple of weeks back. Yeah, where they were, the numbers were actually down. I mean, it was minuscule. I mean, they were talking like 5,000 or something like that, but they were claiming it was a new record, and so I quickly checked the year before, and it was actually higher the year before than the new record they set the next year. So,
well, you see, that's one of the reasons why I think they had to quit, because the cleverer types among them realized that if we keep pushing this record number idea, soon enough we'll be in a position where we're forced to claim that more than 100% of the metropolis actually showed up for our parade.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it was they're obviously trending into the BS. I don't know how much organizers were responsible for that. I remember noticing it back in 1999, 2000, when I was a reporter and I had to put something together about a gay pride parade. And I had noticed that Canadian Press, which is our wire service, similar to Associated Press in the United States, they were always using the same number, 300,000, which even today, looking at what they've done in terms of mathematics and determining how many people can actually be on a parade route, back then they were probably exaggerating completely as well. They always used the same number, at least for about 3 years. They were saying it was like 300,000. So
they're manufacturing consent, and this had a large deal to do with the gay marriage debate, which wasn't much a debate in Canada because the courts decided, okay, you're going to have this whether you like it or not. And the politicians said, well, if you're going to decide for us, thanks, because now we don't have to.
Yeah, I just want to put in a word for Canadian Press here. They are the worst. Oh, man. They are Canada's propaganda organization, par excellence. So I don't have very high expectations for them. A lot of the numbers seem to go back to them as well. When people look at the sources, it's their...
This is an old problem with journalism, which is that a number or a fact is printed in a story and then it gets repeated endlessly. For instance, at one point, I think it was in Wikipedia, that Jack Black, the comedic actor, was born in Edmonton. And, well, he wasn't born in Edmonton. He's not Canadian. And
Chinese whispers.
Everyone just saw this. It appeared in one story, and, oh, that's fascinating, and it just gets repeated endlessly.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we're better at debunking that stuff nowadays because of the internet, and that's probably why these numbers are being questioned quicker. And that's probably why they don't make the estimates anymore. Still, it would be interesting to know, because this year, the parade we're talking about, as you had pointed out, it was attended by all the politicians from all parties. It was the big draw, you know.
Well, no, but if you go back to the number of the number inflation problem, it has a political basis, which is the media is pushing this narrative where people might say gay marriage. I mean, come on. When that came up in 1999 in the House of Commons, the reaction was, what? Are you people serious? And then it was like 2 or 3 years later, this is part of Canada's, multicultural mosaic and always has been. It has. But in that interim period, a lot of people were saying, yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything against the gays. It's just that there's really not very many of them. And we know that not very many of them want to get married. I mean, why should we care about this? Because 1 million people showed up on the streets of Toronto to demonstrate their solidarity with gay pride. Mm-hmm. And, when you look at something like that, obviously the opinion mongers and the elite and the politicians, I don't want to get on the wrong side of 1 million people on anything.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You said they all like a parade. They used to all like rodeo as well. I just recall now that when we were talking about this, I was looking at the numbers for the Edmonton Pride Parade. One of the stories that popped up here in Alberta was that they had canceled the gay rodeo in Strathmore, Alberta, for the first time. I think it was like 16 years in a row they had this thing, and this year, for some reason, it was canceled without much explanation. Now, that could be the downturn in the economy, or it could be because somebody took off with the money. It's hard to say, because there was a dispute. There were problems with, finding people to get refunds. But anyways, it does sort of fit into your peak gay theory, that we're past it.
Well, you may have seen that Black Lives Matter was invited formally to take part in the Toronto parade, and they were to be given some honored status. Okay. And I don't know what idiot was responsible for this, because their whole thing, of course, is look at us, look at us, look at us, look at us. And, I just imagine the conversations, when they saw these dumpy, frumpy, sullen, shouting black women, and they all turned. Did you invite these? Who invited these people? Did you? Was it you?
Well, the thing,
this is a disaster.
No shit. Well, I looked at the, when I went looking for the parade route, I stumbled across their webpage for the 2016 Pride Month. They're up to a month now, by the way, here in Canada. I don't know how they do it in the States, but they're dragging this thing on forever. They have multiple parades, apparently, too, and they have like one for the trans.
They got multiple parades even in Victoria.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They've got the alternative gay parade for all the people who aren't, I don't know, the marginalized, the most marginalized of the marginalized.
Well, that's it. They're trying to wall those people off. They don't want those people in the big parade, right?
Then why would you invite Black Lives Matter? Have you read about this person? I don't really know whether this person is a male or a female. And I don't really know whether this person, I don't know. I know how to spell this person's name, but I don't know how to say it. I'm going to say Janaya Khan. Okay.
Oh, I did see you were tweeting about her. I didn't really notice her before you had brought her up on your feed, but go ahead.
I don't know. Okay. This is a self-description. Janaya Khan is a cyborg. I'm not making this up. As a trans individual, identifying as a cyborg, doesn't it?
I'm thinking maybe. I don't know.
It doesn't sound very black to me, but
sounds kind of Star Trek-y to me. But
Afrofuturism is an aesthetic, Khan said. It is an ideology and a genre. It is literary and something you can wear. It is redefining and reimagining blackness.
Description, I noticed several sort of subtle hints at product lines coming out, particularly in the something you can wear idea. But continue.
It has been shaved in a particular black way. But you know that this is a sure giveaway of madness.
Mm-hmm.
Stop touching me. Stop touching me and my stuff.
My hair, yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's a thing they do in that futuristic black community, is the touching of hair. I'm not sure.
No. But you see this. This is this black claim that is made that they stop, touching strangers. It's not the done thing.
Mm-hmm.
At any point, I expect this con person to shout, "Weasels ripped my flesh and robots stole my luggage."
Everyone's a robot.
She's nuts.
Okay.
Completely nuts. I'll call him the fag end of the Canadian aristocracy. He comes from a storied Canadian family, the Tory family, and he kept running for things and losing, including being humiliated by losing his own seat when he was Ontario PC leader. But now he's finally found a job as mayor of Toronto. And Black Lives Matter started sticking it to him a few months ago, and this guy has a spine made of balsa wood. And what can I do for you? The Toronto police had this thing they did called carding, similar to what they do in New York City. Stop people on the street, ask them for ID. What are you doing? Where are you going?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is stopped, and now there's this question of the records and this suggestion that the records of this are going to be given to Black Lives Matters.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they seem hell-bent on turning Toronto into Canada's Detroit.
Which I think would constitute a national disaster, because Toronto, for Americans that don't know this, is kind of our banking center. Toronto's the holding pen for people that want to make it in New York one day. Yeah, it's the bullpen. Canada's bullpen for New York. The wannabes.
Yeah, Toronto wishes it were New York City.
Yeah. But it's got the banking. It's got the money there, right?
Yeah, the money is in Toronto. Yeah. And that's the seat of our culture as well, because that's where the CBC is.
The seat of our insecurities actually is. My brother once described it to me.
Brian Mulroney, who was Canada's Prime Minister, another conservative, tapped this woman called Rosalie Abella, later of the Supreme Court, to do a study of racism, whatever, systemic, whatever, in Canada, and which he did in, I think, 1984, 1985. And since 1986, we have had government-mandated affirmative action in this country for women and all minorities. Mm-hmm. Now, Canada had a small black population, Underground Railroad derived in Nova Scotia. But until the 1970s, there were almost no black people in Toronto. They're Caribbean immigrants. And yet they talk about this systemic discrimination stuff. I don't know what they're imagining, their great-great-grandfathers being whipped as slaves or whatever. They came here willingly. And what they brought with them was crime and gangs. That's obviously not all that they brought with them. But the racial situation in Toronto is deteriorating. And you've got the intersectionality as well, because Toronto is host as well to very large Chinese and Sikh Hindu populations. Mm-hmm. Oh, and Tamils.
Yeah.
Toronto is an intersectionality petri dish. I would not be surprised, especially given the extraordinarily rapid population increase, where something like 125,000 immigrants every year come to Toronto, every single year, that we see a rapid deterioration in Toronto.
Well, considering the provincial situation there, I don't want to bore our international listeners with it, but, Ontario has one of the largest sub-national government debts, I think, per capita in the world right now.
Worse than California's.
Yeah, they are borrowing money at high rates, and they could sink the entire country one of these days. So
Ontario is actually incredibly a have-not province.
In our equalization, yeah.
In our equalization system, which is the provinces that make money, which has traditionally been Alberta and British Columbia, have to pony up all of these billions every year. And it used to be just Quebec and the Atlantic provinces, but now Ontario is getting this booty as well. And this is a cycle. This is a very bad cycle, because the result is that these governments get to buy votes by issuing all these gives me dats, which they don't have to pay for, with the result that their economy goes increasingly out of whack, because increasingly there's no one who works for a living in these places, or who doesn't work for the government.
Right, yeah. Productive jobs. We're looking at people that produce. Well, it'll be interesting how this kind of dovetails into the whole international scene. What is going to happen if we are renegotiating NAFTA? I mean, Ontario, I think, is going to be in a bit of a panic, which I think that is really
that's
calculated.
The reason why the Canadian dollar collapsed under Prime Minister Paul Martin, and it just collapsed again, although not as badly. The way Canada works is that Ontario and Quebec must be kept happy. And if what manufacturing is left in Ontario and Quebec demands special treatment, well, then we'll just bust down the Canadian dollar so they get an advantage in selling to the United States.
Yeah. Okay, now circle back to the idea of peak gay and the idea that, there are less dollars to go around for everybody. And I think the whole BLM thing kind of makes sense from a gives me dat point of view, right? These people are fighting over fewer and fewer dollars that are available.
Well, they're angrier, and the angrier group always wins. I suspect that there may have been a significant decrease in the Pride attendance this year because of Orlando. Next year, I suspect that we'll see many fewer people there, because the whole point of the Pride Parade is to have a good time, and people are not going to want to show up there if they're going to be accused of being racists.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the intersectionality thing could kill it, which would be, I guess, interesting. Let's look a little farther afield here.
Well, I just wanted to say something. I wanted to make a joke about Black Lives Matter, that there's a real opportunity for hands across the aisle unity here, because the right wing, the left wing, and the center all hate Black Lives Matter.
They just ruin everything.
Yes. Why can't we have nice things here? BLM.
Yeah. Well, how's it looking down in the United States in terms of the old? I mean, people have made fun of Canada as, being a super gay country. Is it looking that way down in the United States? Like it's their time has passed?
Well, no, it's a question of gay tourism. And you need disposable income. And there's a lot less disposable income than there was before 2007.
Yeah. So
people get the money, but they have to borrow it.
Right.
Because there's many fewer good jobs. Now, there's still lots and lots of good jobs in government, and government continues to increase in size, but that can't be extended infinitely.
Well, one of the lines they like to trot out all the time out of these, during Gay Pride Month is that, well, yes, we seem to own the world, but we still have a long way to go. There's always this long way to go before we're not sure. Accepted completely till we have all the power and we are forcing people to worship us.
I'm looking at a picture which someone sent me, and it's a picture of the Prime Minister of Canada looking like a complete twat.
Is that the pink shirt? Is that one of them?
Yes.
Is it where he's holding the flag?
He's holding the rainbow Canadian flag that they tarted up this flag, which has the red maple leaf on the white background, but the red bars on the sides have been replaced by rainbows. And I don't know, Trudeau looks like he just got a jolt of adrenaline. I mean, from an IV.
Yeah.
He looks deranged.
Yeah, that was probably the most undignified prime ministerial shot I've ever seen in my life.
Now, I could point out that, I don't know, older people might take offense at this because the Canadian flag is not some schmata which you can repurpose endlessly.
Apparently you can.
Well, no, I mean, you see the progression here.
Yeah.
That the gays stole the word gay, and then they stole the word pride, and then they stole the rainbow, which was God's promise to Noah. And, well, now they've taken the Canadian flag as well. I walked by City Hall in Victoria, and they got the rainbow flag waving there.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of weeks ago, the rainbow flag was at half-mast because of Orlando. And I'm rather at a loss there to explain this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was horrifying and sad what happened in Orlando. It didn't happen in Victoria, and it didn't happen in Canada.
Yeah.
I mean, the planted axiom here is really that we're all gay.
Well, they're not going to get very far with that. But who knows? The public school system might succeed one day, and we all will be.
Now, this Speak Gay, there's a problem here for them, which is that they have got everything they wanted.
Success.
They've got everything they wanted in the law. They've got everything they wanted in education. And they are forced to find crazier causes to back, and one of which has been the trannies and bathroom equality. And, of course, Trudeau's government is committed to a bathroom equality bill and also making transphobia a crime. And the sort of person who I mentioned earlier, I don't have anything against the gays, and okay, they seem to want these things, so let's give it to them. How does that affect me? Well, when you get into the tranny business and when you get into people calling themselves cyborgs, then you've crossed a line.
What line is that, Kevin? Please. Is that just an arbitrary line drawn in the sand of crazy or what,
Well, no, I mean, one of the things that happened, particularly on the right or in the center in North America, the Western world generally, is that we had a generation of gay demands, and they won victory after victory, and the last big victory was gay marriage, and the word went out that one doesn't want to be on the wrong side of history because it's the current year and all. So if we give the gays marriage, then this will be the last of their non-negotiable demands, and we can all relax and try to go back to normal life, but not a bit of it. It never ends.
Yes.
It's like the old joke about the troika being pursued by wolves, with the idea that if you throw off a body once in a while, that the wolves will get tired of chasing, but they don't.
Mm-hmm. But now we've sicked Black Lives Matter on them. So,
there was a lot of schadenfreude in the Canadian media today, a lot. And it was interesting to see, because if you accuse these people of harboring any sentiments less than wholly celebrating gayness, they would be shocked and angered. But it was like, oh, yes, Black Lives Matter. Oh, and it couldn't happen to a nicer group of people.
So what was the takeaway from all the columnists that were writing about this? That yes, homophobia exists, but racism is more important. Have we got a hierarchy, a structure here yet, or what?
Well, it's my assumption that the black population of Toronto is something like about 10%.
Okay.
But I'll have to check that figure. There's not all that many black people in Canada, but it's strange if you watch television, and I know you do. There's an awful lot of black people on Canadian television, particularly in the commercials, and they all seem to own houses. and they all seem to be in the market for expensive new cars, and they all seem to have grade A credit because you see them in the bank commercials, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really remarkable, the strange view of Canada that you get from the advertising agencies, but of course that's no accident.
I think that's happening in the United States as well. I mean, I've seen people remark on that elsewhere.
Well, no, but it's happening in the United States. But the black population of the United States is about 12 or 13%.
Yeah.
Which is, quite significant. And that number has stayed stable for decades.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
It's nothing like that in Canada.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, it's the current year and all that, right? So it's the trend. Why not? It's more inclusive. Everybody has to do it. Everybody has to avoid being called racist.
Well, one of the things that's happening, and I suppose Laurie Goldstein of the Toronto Sun noticed this, that the full horror of intersectionality is now, this is filtering out into the mainstream. That what we are looking at here is the war of all against all. And, well, who likes that? Does anyone like that?
The elites. Those elites.
The idea that, gays, I'm all for the gays, but what about the black gays? Well, by definition, I would be in favor of the black gays as well. They're not the same, they're not. Were you about to say that all lives matter? No. Where did you get an idea such as that? No, all lives don't matter. I don't really know what that means. But as I wrote in V-Day, diversity has given us a world where the commonweal has disappeared. Instead, there are innumerable minority groups muling what about us and our pain.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is.
Of course, we talked about this in a previous podcast with the reaction to Orlando, with that, that little creep Owen Jones in Britain.
Oh, right.
They're gay martyrs. Well, yeah, okay, you could look at them as gay martyrs, but they're also Latinos and Americans as well. No, they're gay. Yeah, but, people can be more than one thing.
Well, there has to be a hierarchy, and that's what I was asking about earlier, so what happens in the war of all against all?
Muslims are at the top of the hierarchy.
Do you think so?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Muslims are at the top of the hierarchy.
Well, you see, that's where Orlando was a real problem, because there was only one of them.
I suppose blacks would come next, although it's a difficult question, Because what we see going on in the United States, and Steve Saylor is always going on about this, that in terms of absolute numbers, the Hispanics have passed the blacks. And it hasn't escaped the attention of some black people in the United States to this view that they're being displaced deliberately. It's like we spent all these decades caring about you so much, and we're tired of caring about you. And now we have these Hispanics with their, they have salsa and delicious food and weird teenage birthday celebrations. There's a name there beginning with Q, which I cannot attempt to pronounce, so I won't.
I have no idea what you're talking about. What?
The Queen Sarah or whatever.
Oh, okay.
It's this big celebration on Mexican people's, 14th, 15th, 16th birthday, something like that. It's a huge deal.
Okay, it's kind of like a communion or a debutante ball or something like that?
Well, no, it's sort of like a secular bar mitzvah
okay.
For girls.
Okay. Out of Mexico?
Well, you see a lot of this in the United States now.
Okay.
Because these Mexican habits, well, there's so many Mexicans in the United States that they brought their habits with them.
Okay.
But, I mean, the situation in Canada is different because we never had any blacks to speak of until the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're here, and apparently they're queer as well.
Get used to it. Yeah.
And get used to it, yeah. Now, I was thinking about this in terms of Toronto. Okay, so let's look at how many black people there are in Toronto, and let's look at how many lesbians there are in Toronto. And let's look at how many angry black lesbians there could be in Toronto. What are we looking at, 27?
They managed to stop the parade, you know. They sat down and stopped the
Well,
parade.
I don't
Shook the world.
I don't think that it's very difficult to stop anything in Toronto. But they had the G8 there a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And we had this ridiculous typical situation where the anarchists go nuts, you know, smashing up storefront windows, and the police sit on their hands. But then later, where are you going? What business is it of yours? You know, and then where are you going? I'm going to my apartment, which is a block away. Well, I'm afraid you can't do that. What are you talking about, right? Was the police going after soft targets? I mean, this G8 thing in Toronto was an absolute disaster, which cost, what, $1 billion or something?
That's the one, okay. Security? Yeah, I was trying to remember which one cost $1 billion, and that was it, yeah. Well, I understand the police were ticked off at BLM during this Toronto fiasco recently.
Yeah, we want to be gay too.
Yeah,
but these mean black people won't let us.
Well, you know, I mean, one of the things I did discover, because I was trying to follow the money, you know, the city grants, I think it's the city grants them something like $200,000 for cleanup and policing. So there's got to be a lot of police overtime there. They got to be making some money out of that. So all of a sudden BLM tells them to go home. You know, that's, you know, probably some good holiday money those officers are missing now that they were promised.
Oh, I'm sure they still got paid.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, I'll say something here that ordinary people, normies, as we like to call them on the alt-right, when they see these police cruisers there painted in the rainbow colors, they're thinking, I thought the police were supposed to be representing everybody. The idea of the police associating themselves with a radical political movement, but I guess that's not really noteworthy anymore. Toronto's police chief is a black man, and he, not that long ago, apologized for bathhouse raids, which had happened, I think, in the 1980s. Or the late 1970s. This is where the Pride Parade came out of, supposedly. And the BLM people noted his weakness, and they were on him like seaweed on sushi after that.
Beautiful. Wow. The snake is eating its tail. Anyways, to sum up on this whole concept of peak gay, I mean, it's pretty fashionable to call everything peak right now. I mean, we've been doing that for quite a few podcasts, you know, saying this is peak that and everything's changing. I mean, is everything just sort of, is it peak, or is it just sort of ebbing for a little while, and will it reassert itself once it gets organized or purges the Black Lives Matter out of the Gay Pride Parade?
The gay concept has a built-in problem. It's a revolutionary notion, which does not apply to human behavior as it's been observed throughout history. You used to have people who were called homosexuals, and these were people who had sexual relations with members of the same sex. That's not what gay means. Gay is an identity. Gay is an immutable identity.
Like cyborg.
Which is the most important thing about any gay person's life. So it's an umbrella term. But now you have these people, what about the Muslim gays? What about the black gays? What about the Jewish gays, etc.? And you see that the instability built into the gay identity from the beginning, well, the chickens have come home to roost.
Ah, I see. So it starts to fracture. This is where success comes into the picture, because they achieve this success that allows all these other groups to start bubbling up from under the surface. And now,
well, everyone loves a parade, and what we've seen in Toronto is the same thing that happened with the St. Patrick's Day parade in New York City, which was, the gays wanted their own separate gayness there, right? And this was fought for years, and beer companies, and I'll just mention one, Heineken, and I'm never going to touch a drop of that stuff again, boycotted the parade in New York City because they wouldn't let the gays march as gays. And, of course, they caved in, and so the Catholic component of the parade largely dissipated. But if you look at the St. Patrick's Day parade, what's it about? Well, it's about being Irish. Now, I've seen figures quoted that something like 40% of Americans claim Irish ancestry, which is wildly inflated.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't see much harm in this. What's the other thing that the St. Patrick's Day parade is about? It's getting drunk in public in the middle of the day. Now I can see the appeal of that. Now, it's not something you'd want to do on a regular basis, but if it's only, one day, March the 17th, every year, where we all pretend to be Irish and we all get drunk in the middle of the day, yeah, well, I can see people turning out for that. The Pride Parade, especially given that it began as a protest, well, now that they've won, what's it about?
I don't know. I was just want to back up for a second, and I'm thinking maybe we should make it St. Patty's Month.
Oh no! Don't start with that. I no. This is a real bête noire for me.
Well,
because sometimes St. Patrick's Day is on a Tuesday or Wednesday, which does not lend itself to a 4-day bender. And so you see people. You've seen this yourself. It's the same thing with Halloween now.
Yeah.
That no, Halloween's not till Tuesday, but we're going to dress up on Friday and Saturday of the week before.
Mm-hmm.
Because, celebrating holidays on the day of the holiday, that should be illegal. That's just such a repression.
Well, no, you'd ask me what it was all about. What's Gay Pride all about? And that's kind of why I threw in the whole St. Patty's Month. Well, it seems to be a month-long. Pride is a month-long celebration of this multiple identities now, because they have these various parades for trans and whatnots on all these other different days. So
it's a government program.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you will notice that this was very subtle. It's not like there was a big announcement. For many years, it was the Gay Pride Parade, and they dropped the gay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, this leads one to the suspicion that they harbor this belief that everyone is gay, whereas it's actually something like 1 out of 87 people. Mm-hmm. And that leads to the fascinating question of why are these people so powerful? Oh, you don't want to get on the wrong side of the gays. Well, what are they going to do? Snark us to death?
Well, no, they have quite an affinity network, and
they got their affinity network,
and it goes into the law and into judgeships and all kinds of stuff. So it's that's not paranoid fantasy. We know that that has had an influence on our culture, in politics and in law. So
yeah, they're like the Masons.
Yeah, the Masons didn't have their own parade.
No, the Gay Pride. It started as a protest and a gesture of solidarity, and then it became a party. But now, if it's going to be half a dozen or a dozen groups all sniping at each other, saying, I'm more gay than you, and my oppression is more real and more important than yours, I can see this falling away very quickly, can't you?
Well, we could just call it Heritage Days, too. Because that's what happens at Heritage Days nowadays. So.
Oh, well, no, they had this festival. Edmonton is the city of festivals, I should point out.
Yeah, city of champions.
I once lived there. Lawrence Decore told me that very grandly, and I thought, is he trolling me?
Mm-hmm.
But they had this festival, Heritage Days, in Edmonton, where all the various ethnic groups, and one year that I was living in Edmonton, someone had foolishly put the Serbs and the Croats close to one another,
yeah.
Which led to a melee in Horalek Park, which led to a high-speed chase down Jasper Avenue.
It's like that scene, the Community reference coming up, yeah, where the South Koreans and the North Koreans were put together. The food trucks were put side by side, which led to a giant riot. Remember that?
Yeah. Obligatory Community reference. Yeah,
there you go. Well, we might have to end it with that, so I give you one last opportunity, Mr. Grace, to make your final argument.
No, this is good.
Okay.
No, this is all. It's all good.
Excellent. Okay.
Because identity politics inevitably leads to dissolution, and these people have done enormous damage to our society, and now they're getting their comeuppance.
There we go. And with that, we'll call an end to episode 44 of Grace and Steel. I'm Kevin Steele.
And I'm Kevin and Michael Grace.